morning. This is your Talk About It Tuesday. It's pre-recorded this time because I'm out of town. And today we're going to talk about the pet pantry. The pet pantry's been around since even before I started. When I started, it was kind of haphazard and you just stopped by and we might have food, we might not, and you just didn't know. We left it that way until 2023. Maybe into 2024, I can't quite remember. But anyways, we made it more regular when I started getting owner surrender forms for animals that because they could no longer afford to take care of them. And when I would ask what it was they couldn't afford to take care of anymore, they would say a lot of times feeding them. So here's people having animals that the only reason they can't keep them is that sometimes they can't feed them. Or maybe in that moment, I literally would have surrenders that said, I don't have any money to get them food this week and I don't want them to go hungry. So they were ready to give up their pets because they didn't have food for a week, which is not on the dog owner. It was typically dogs or cat owner. That's them just loving their animals and not wanting to watch them suffer. But they love their animals. That was the point. They obviously did, or they wouldn't have been willing to do that. Because who wants to give up their animals like that? So they, after this kept happening, I was like, okay, I've already got enough owner surrenders trying to come in for various other reasons that they can't control. If they're just struggling to feed their animal, it's a lot less for the shelter to help feed their animal than here and there and let them keep it than it is for us to figure out how we're going to take more animals. And then what if we can't find homes? We don't euthanize for space, so we would be turning away more and more if we're just taking in more animals only because they don't have food for 1 or 2 times a month or for that particular week or whatever. So I went to the board and talked to them about it and was like, hey, I really feel like this is an important thing that we need to make it a regular thing. We need to work to try and have food regularly for these people so that we don't have to take in more animals, or other shelters are not getting asked to take more animals when we can't take them. So that's when we made it more regular. Now, we did find that there were people who were taking advantage of the system. Breeders who were selling their puppies. No. And some people who were double dipping, as we call it, where they were claiming the same animals, having more than one person come in and claiming the same animals so they could get more food. We have worked hard to negate all that. And for some people, they really don't like the pet pantry. I know there's still that mindset that, well, if they can't afford to feed them and they can't do this and they can't do that, then you know what? They shouldn't have them. But the system is already overcrowded. We already are having more supply of adoptable animals than we have for places to put them or people to adopt them. So what do we do if we're taking in these animals because they can't feed them here and there once in a while, sometimes, right? And also, not all of those animals that those people are harboring and keeping are very adoptable or going to adjust to a new home or may not have personalities or behaviors that other people are willing to tolerate, and these people are handling it, taking care of it. So we could see more euthanasia if if we can't find a situation that fits this dog, or if that dog is not going to work in a new home because they can't adjust. So we have our pet pantry. We have rules with the pet pantry. You sign a paper when you sign up, and each year you have to re-sign a new paper to remind you of the rules and to assess that you are not adding animals. That is one of the rules. When you start, these are the number of cats and dogs that you are feeding, and the rule says you cannot add more animals, and we will not let you add more animals to your list, so therefore we will not feed those animals. If you have 2 dogs and 4 cats when you sign up and you come back and say, well, I just got a puppy, what? You can't feed the ones you have and you're adding? No, that's not going to work. And I realize there are a few situations where there's no choice and we can discuss those, but most of the time it's just people adding animals and thinking they're going to get more food. We don't do that. You are stuck with what you signed up and that is it. You can only come twice a month. That way we don't have people taking advantage of it too often. And we have them sign each time they get food. That way we can track that it's only been 2 times a month. You cannot be a breeder. And if you're found to be a breeder, you're kicked off. You cannot double dip. If we find you're double dipping, we will kick you off. Things like that. So we have things in place to, try to make it fair. It is only open to Highland County residents. We don't have it open to everybody everywhere. Most humane societies in the rural counties around us have some form of a pet pantry because we're not the only ones seeing that as the reason they need to surrender their animals. What many people may not realize is that 75% of the people who use our program only come a couple times a year, sometimes only once a year. They just needed help that one particular week. They came, they got their food, and they never came back. Do we have people who come twice a month all year long and have for years? We do. But those people are keeping their animals. Those people are super grateful for what we do, whether it's a small bag or a big bag or whatever we can manage at the time, because we do adjust it based on what we have available. Those people are super grateful. But at the end of the year, I count up how many pounds of dog food and cat food we give out. We look at how many times people are coming, and almost always, the majority of it is people who just used it sporadically to help them, which is exactly what it's there for. And if there are some people who need it on a regular basis, then so be it. Again, those are not animals coming into our shelter, coming into the dog pound, being loose on the streets, ending up somewhere else, causing problems for other societies or areas, right? Lately, there's been some upset about what kind of food we give out or where it comes from. I'm not really sure why that's a shocker that some of the food we get donated to us goes to the pet pantry, because the food had to come from somewhere, right? And it always has had to come from somewhere. So I don't understand how this is a big shock. If you follow us, we have a pet pantry. You know that we offer it. Anybody in Highland County, it's becoming more and more known that we do it. So yeah, the food has to come from somewhere. We don't know why that's a surprise, but again, if that's all it takes, then let's do it. I mean, that's caring for animals. That's our job, right? We're supposed to be here to help the public, to help the community. And if your mindset is still that if you can't afford X, Y, Z, then you shouldn't own animals, then either get involved somewhere so you can learn how bad the intake situation is, or think about it as, where do those animals go? And if you still think that, be prepared that if that is the mindset that humane societies and shelters take, instead of offering a pet pantry, that there's going to be probably more euthanasia, because when you have more animals than you have space for, when you have more animals than you have homes for, at some point something has to give, because everybody hits a max on what they can afford. So if you already own 3 dogs and that's the max you can afford, you're not going to be adopting a 4th one. And if you can't or don't want to own an animal, then that's not going to help either. So again, you need to realize there is limits to where these animals can go. And overcrowding the shelters, where the shelters get in over their heads, doesn't help the animals. It doesn't help the community because the animals get less care, they get less attention. It makes it harder to know the animal to try and get them into the right home. And it makes it harder for adopters because you don't know much about the animal. And they're not as well cared for. And they're not as well behaved because they've been sitting in cages instead of kennels. Or they're not getting the walks and the attention that they could be getting if you weren't overcrowded. And eventually, things get really bad downhill. So yes, we have a pet pantry. Yes, we have a limit. Yes, it is open to only Highland County residents. Yes, people use it. And yes, the food that we get is sometimes designated to the pet pantry. Because feeding animals a constant rotating diet of different foods causes stomach upset, gastro upset, which means lots of diarrhea and throwing up, and animals literally feeling like crap because their diet is all messed up. There's a reason why us people at home feed our animals the same food all the time, because of that reason. There's a reason why we say you need to transition slowly to a new food. Well, when you're housing 30 dogs and 25 cats, you can't always do that when the food you're getting comes in 5 pounds and 10 pounds and 20 pounds. You might have a different food mixture from breakfast to dinner every day. So every meal is now something new. And it's not healthy for them. And it makes adopters worry that the animal is truly sick and not just having a food issue. And it doesn't allow us to know when an animal is truly sick or just having an upset stomach from the change of food. So either we're giving them medications they didn't need because it was a change in the food, or we're not treating them because we think it's a change in food. So the pet pantry is here. If you look around, everybody's doing it because that is how bad the need is. The world is more expensive. It's hard to find food for our animals. I will tell you, if you, at least with dogs, if you really need like the most affordable food you can find, the one that I have found that still has decent ingredients is Retriever at Tractor Supply, a 50-pound bag for $30. They come in high protein, they come in different flavors. I've been feeding that to my dogs for years. They do well on it. I also have mix in Diamond, which is another high quality, lower cost food. And neither one of those are advertised. And I'm told that that's why the prices are lower. Now the Diamond has a higher quality, does cost more. I just found that mixing it is the perfect combination for my particular pups, but not everybody needs to. But in the end, food is food, and anything is better than not eating at all. So, Pet Pantry is not to upset anybody. It is only to help.